Hello and thanks for joining us on Africa Independent Television, AIT. Welcome to Democracy Today. I am Ijoma Osamor. Yes, it is 97 days, which many will rather call 14 weeks or 4 months to February 16, a day scheduled for the 2019 presidential election. The 2019 general election is just around the corner, but there are fears that the process leading to the elections have unresolved issues which are creating intra-party disputes. On Thursday, on the floor of the House of Representatives, some lawmakers voiced out their reservation about the just concluded party primaries, which produced party standard bearer for elective positions. According to lawmakers, the provisions of the Electoral Act were grossly violated by political parties during the primaries. On the score of the complaint, the House set up another committee to look into the matter, and the committee was charged to determine whether the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) colluded with the parties to flout the Electoral Act in the conduct of the primaries. The resolution was sequel to a motion titled "Lack of Internal Democracy: The Conduct Party Primaries Towards 2019 Elections," moved by Abubakar Adamu of the APC Niger State. Let's take a look at the argument on the floor of the Green Chambers on Thursday.
No contestant in Niger State can tell you he knows the result of that election.
From the party primaries up until the election, every day we talk here about strengthening and deepening our democracy, but lawyers know that you can't build something on nothing. If the process that throws up our leadership is flawed, then the argument that Nigerians always make that the bane of our country is leadership and corruption is so true. Mr. Speaker, sir, the leadership that we have, in the words of Jimmy Carter, he said, leadership is as good as its people, and people will get the leadership they deserve. But the question is, do we deserve the kind of leadership we have in the country? We're complicit when we're quiet. We're complicit when we don't shout about the type of leadership that we have. The leadership is not because that's what we deserve. It's a consequence of our corruption. A corrupt system that throws up the leadership that unfortunately Nigeria is saddled. Mr. Speaker, sir, if the process does not throw up people who are hungry to serve the Nigerian people, but who are thrown up by people who want them to serve certain people, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, our democracy cannot grow. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand here today, and I'm of the People's Democratic Party of Nigeria. We pride ourselves about being the Democratic Party of Nigeria. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, as a woman, we always say, and the PDP Constitution captures it, that there shall be 35% affirmative action. 51% of the population deserves at least 35% representation. The numbers in the House of Reps have dwindled for women. Political parties must respect their constitution. We must throw up leadership that owes the Nigerian people. If the political system that throws up the leadership of this country is flawed, Mr. Speaker, I do not believe that our democracy will be stronger from 2019.
If we wait and the general election in 2019 is conducted, then INEC again will come under that provision of the Constitution and will refuse to conduct that election.
I think we should sound it loud and clear that INEC should immediately begin the process of delineation.
It could be deduced from the argument that some parties brazenly refuse to hold primaries in the contravention of Section 87, subsection 10 of the Electoral Act, which makes it mandatory for parties to hold primaries. Doubtless, this may be the source of intra-party squabbles in some state chapter of the political parties. Let us take a close look at the section in the Electoral Act as amended, raised by the lawmaker. All right, that's section 87 is what we'll be looking at today, and also we'll be asking questions if the political party kept by the Electoral Act, and what is the position of INEC. We have guests in the studio to take a deeper look at this issue and more. I am being joined in the studio by the lawmaker who raised the motion in the House of Representatives, talking about Honorable Abubakar Chika-Adamu. You're welcome to Democracy Today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. And we have the spokesman to INEC Chairman, Rotimi Oyekami. Welcome to Democracy Today.
Thank you for having me.
And we have a lawyer who is also, who was the former Attorney General of Benue State. I have right here in the studio, I think it's Adam. Yeah. You're welcome to Democracy Today.
Nice having me back.
Yes, we will go to issues, but first of all, let's hear from you before we go to other issues. What was the complaint about? Why was the rowdiest session in the House on Thursday?
Thank you very much. Actually, this emerged as a result of the fallout from the primary elections. And everyone will come, he will give his own part of the story. And particularly, I focus on what I knew in my constituency in Niger State. And what happened then was, you can recall that all the political parties continued to shift elections until the dying minute. For example, the Senate was shifted to the 7th, the House of Representatives was shifted to the the Senate election was shifted to the 6th, to the 5th, House of Reps to the 6th, and then House of Assembly on the 7th. But however, at the end of the day, what happened in my constituency, there was no election, or the election that was conducted was not supervised by INEC, nothing was done. For example, I came from Chirora Rafi. In Rafi local government, the election did not take place until on the 7th, the day of the State Assembly. But in Shiroro, at that time, the election took place in 8 out of the 11 wards. Then in Shiroro local government, where they took material, because it was direct primary, was only in about 4 wards. And then in Muya local government, they said about 4 wards also. So now, after that, I want to tell you, nobody was given any result. Absolutely no result was given to any candidate.
If you say no result was given to any candidate, how come?
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. On the 12th of October, the governor called all the candidates for a meeting. I refused to go. And I told all the city members not to go, and they did not go. Now, he put all the candidates, he said, he has discussed with Mr. President that there was no election in Niger State. And therefore, Mr. President suggested they should give the forms, the nomination forms, to the most popular candidate. He set up committees in each political zone. In his own wisdom, which is in conflict with the party constitution and the Electoral Act, he made that submission, and that is what they did. So if you said you are a winner of election in Niger State, then the only thing that must have happened, like I will tell you, maybe I am the winner, is the result that were tallied the where election took place by your agent, which is not tenable anywhere. So I better take his position, there was no election in Niger State. And therefore, how did the candidate emerge? And let me tell you, election stopped on the 7th. I knew in my local government, it was on the 8th, when there was no election, they said they conducted that of State Assembly. And every election was supposed to have closed by the 7th. So that is to tell you, even in Niger State, we don't even have State Assembly members by law that are eligible to contest, just the way we have in Zamfara. My biggest shock is the issue of INEC. If INEC, in its wisdom, would say there was no election in Zamfara State and argue with APC, then was there election in Niger State? Who supervised it as an INEC staff? This is a question that is yet to be answered.
Okay. Can you just allow INEC take a look at that? Thank God we have the spokesman of the INEC chairman here. He asked the question, who supervised the election in some of these states, especially his own state?
Well, the issue of primaries is well laid out in the Electoral Act. If you want to hold your primaries, you give us notice, we come, and we may not even tell you we are coming, but we turn up and monitor and compile our reports. Now, I wasn't there in Niger, so I think that we will wait for the people, our staff, who were deployed to that place to submit their report, and then we can have an insight into what really happened. Without prejudice to what this gentleman has said, like I said, I wasn't there, but if there was no election, or the election was done in a shabby manner, we will get the report and we will act accordingly.
So you're thinking that that's the party issue, not INEC issue?
Well, the issue of primary is a purely party issue. INEC does not, we're just observing. You know, we pray and we always implore them during our interactions at all the quarterly meetings to practice internal democracy, because INEC can never be happy when you have issues within parties coming up like this every general election cycle, because it doesn't augur well for democracy.
Now, if you say INEC is just there as an observer, but the Electoral Act spells it out that parties must conduct primaries.
That's correct.
And in that, INEC will be a part of it as an observer.
That's correct.
You have your own report after the primaries.
That's correct.
So now, INEC cannot close his eyes when he knows that from the report he has, the name that is with him, with them, is different from the name that the party submitted. But
you see, the law does not give us the power to reject the list from the national executive of the party. That's the problem. The only thing I think that can happen is if there is a litigation, if, for instance, the aggrieved party goes to court and INEC is joined and called upon to come and testify, we'll go there and testify. Until the law is amended, we cannot reject, even if we are sure that the person on the list is not the person that won the election. If the election took place, we cannot reject that list.
All right, Barrister Tar.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this, because you are a lawyer. If we look at Section 87 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, the very first part of that section, subsection 1, is a political party seeking to nominate candidates for election under the Act shall hold primaries for aspirants to all elective positions. And if the account that the Honorable just gave is anything to go by, would you say that the parties fell short of the Electoral Act?
Yeah, the question of internal democracy is actually the bedrock, you know, of the sustenance of our democracy, because if you look at the Constitution empowers the National Assembly, where he is from, you know, to enact a law under Section 228 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, to regulate the conduct of political party primaries. The essence of that provision is to ensure that there is internal democracy in the conduct of political parties. And in the wisdom of the National Assembly, the Electoral Act 2010, which is the extant Electoral Act, which you just quoted under Section 87, subsection 1, you know, provides that any political party seeking to feed candidates for any general election or any by-election or any election at all to be conducted by INEC must conduct a primary election to select its candidates. And there are two modes of the conduct of primary elections. Primary elections are either by direct primaries, which means that all registered members of the political party are given an opportunity, and all the candidates are availed an opportunity, you know, who are desirous of contesting election, you know, to stand for these elections and be voted for by, you know, party members. The second option is by indirect primaries, which means that the political party makes arrangement for the democratic election of delegates that will participate at various levels. From the only level that is excluded from indirect primaries is at the councillorship level.
Yes.
For councillors, all party members through direct primaries are to elect the candidate of the party. But from the House of Assembly, House of Representatives, to Senator, Governor, and the President, if you're going to do indirect primaries, then you must make arrangement for the conduct of democratic elections for the selection of delegates who will participate at the various levels for the selection of these candidates. Now, any political party that fails to do that by law ought not to have candidates for their election. However, the law is that in interpreting Section 87 and all the provisions accompanying Section 87, you know, the court, and even the law itself provides that an aggrieved candidate who feels he was either disenfranchised or prevented from participating in the election, you know, of the primary election, can go to the High Court, either a High Court of a state or the Federal High Court, to challenge the conduct of that election, that primary election. And until that happens, the political party itself and INEC do not really, under the current extant law, have the powers to exclude any of the candidates submitted by the political parties from participating in the election. But an aggrieved candidate arising from the primary election has the powers to go to court. And even the courts, by the provisions of the law, do not have the powers to countermand the election or stop the conduct of the election arising from that litigation. The only time, you know, the impact of a litigation will be felt would be when the court decides ultimately whether or not primaries were conducted or whether or not the litigant who comes to court, you know, to petition the conduct of the election has merit, his case has merit. Once that is determined, then the court will now say candidate A ought to be the candidate for this, or this political party did not conduct primaries for this particular election and so ought not to have fielded a candidate for that particular election. And if the court determines that way, what happens usually is, if there are two political parties who are participating in that election, then it means that the other political party that conducted the primaries and fielded candidates in accordance with the law will be declared the winner of the election, even if the votes, tally of votes, were in favor of the other party which failed to conduct its primary election.
Yeah. So now let me ask this. Now, if you're taking, let me just take a question I saw on my Twitter handle. Remember that you can drop a comment with us on the Facebook. You go to Democracy Today, or does you like our page and also drop a comment, or you follow us on the Twitter handle. You can join us at Democracy #2 Day with the double Y. Or you can follow me on my Twitter handle and drop a comment there. Let's start taking your comments. My Twitter handle is at EJ Osamor. Now, let me take these. This one just came in. It said taking Section 87 of the Electoral Act into consideration. It's coming from Livingston Wichi. What will be the credibility question of the various political parties across Nigeria? And another part to that question is, will ignorance of the law absolve them? He said this is a clear invasion of the law, democratic injustice in our body politic, dangerous.
Yeah, let me start from the very last question. Ignorance of the law certainly is not an excuse. The law is there. Anybody who is participating in the election ought to have, you know, acquainted himself with the provisions of the law. So you cannot take the law for granted, and that you're ignorant of the provisions of the law doesn't excuse the conduct. And whether the outcome of the conduct of primaries, which significantly, because let me say that if you look at the current situation, this 2018 primary elections, you know, they are falling significantly far short of the standards we achieved in 2014, leading to 2015. The consequences, like I said, for non-compliance, you know, with the provisions of Section 87, are still matters within the internal affairs of the political parties. And only those who are members of the political party who directly participated or who aspire to participate in the elections have a right or a local standard to go to court, you know, to petition the outcome of the primaries. INEC's role is to supervise, and like the spokesman or the chairman said, INEC, once they are notified, they make arrangements to come and supervise the election. They're not under obligation to notify the political party whether they're coming or not. However, if a question of litigation arises, INEC is a relevant witness to whether or not they monitor the primaries and the primaries complied with the provisions of the law. And I think anybody who is aggrieved, that's his first witness. INEC will be the first witness, you know, to be put in the dock to confirm whether or not, you know, like he said, he alleged that in Nigeria there were no primaries that were conducted. The INEC report definitely will indicate, you know, because you're supposed to indicate the date and the venue for the conduct of the primaries. And so INEC couldn't have gone to Government House, you know, to go and supervise primaries. And I don't think Government House is part of the approved, you know, designated centers for the conduct of election. the approved designated centers for conduct of elections. For the councillorship election, for instance, is at the ward center.
Yes.
You know, the House of Assembly is at the local government or state constituency center, while the Federal House of Representatives is also at the Federal Constituency Center.
Where
indirect primaries. When you're conducting indirect primaries. Now, which is essentially what most of the parties did. But for APC, for instance, they opted to a mix of direct and indirect primaries. And I think that's where some of the crises, you know, that engulfed the APC, you know, arose from. In 2015, they, like the PDP, also went for the direct primaries. And, you know, over the years, beyond the IBB transition, which adopted option A4, which made the the direct primaries very popular. Since 1999 up to this moment, I think the APC are the only political party, you know, that have tried to, you know, implement the direct primary option as contained in the Electoral Act. And because they're implementing it for the first time in a long time, I think the challenges, the sheer challenges of logistics of managing it, and like you said, they kept postponing the election. You know, even when they planned today, they will shift it to another day because they were playing, you know, a hide-and-seek game with the PDP. The PDP perfected their act. The governance structures of the political parties, if you will ask me, in my own personal opinion, the PDP has a better entrenched governance structure. The APC is, in terms of governance, you know, patently very weak. Patently very weak.
Okay.
The change of leadership almost on the eve of the conduct of the primaries, and that change wasn't even, you know, structural change. It wasn't done in a way and manner that this is. So the entire party itself was not very organized, you know, for the conduct of the primaries.
Now, go back to you, Honorable. I know you have so much to tell, because when I spoke with a correspondent in the House, he says you spoke so bitterly on the floor of the Green Chamber that day. Now, if your party conducted, what they adopted was direct primaries in your state,
yes,
in your constituency too,
yes,
and you are very sure that that direct primaries went smoothly.
Yeah, I gave you a scenario that 8 out of 11 wards there was primaries.
8 out of 11.
8 out of 11 wards there was primaries took place. Then in the other, that is in Rafi local government. In Shiroro local government, about 4 wards was reported to me that that was the only place that primaries took place. Then in Munya local government, they also say about 4. These are reports from the agent. As I'm telling you, no official report. At least as a candidate in that election, a result should be declared and a copy should be given to me or my agent, that even if I have lost that election. But as I'm telling you, that does not exist in the whole election of House of Representatives, in the whole election of State Assembly in Niger State.
So you mean that there was no primaries,
well,
no
I
election?
think we need to conclude.
No election.
Because I even asked at the venue of Rafi local government, did you see the INEC officers everywhere? Nobody would tell you. The party office, even at the state, was closed down that day. So the problem is that in Niger State, I still repeat, if we are to go by the governor's statement, yes, there was no election. So how do they feel candidate? And my biggest source of concern is, how did INEC come to the knowledge that there was no election in Zamfara and there was House of Representatives and State Assembly election? Mind you, I want to tell you, without fear of contradiction, every election stopped on the 7th. And I swear by Allah, election did not take place of State Assembly, even if it is a caricature election, mockery election, did not take place in Rafi local government until on the 8th.
Now,
so how did you have the candidate of State Assembly from Rafi?
Have you gone to court? Because the Electoral Act says you need to go to court.
Yes, well, for me, let me be very frank with you, for people who knew, I wasn't an interested party to contest election. It was a pressure from my emirate council and my elders. They pressurized me, they follow me everywhere, and I cannot let them down. That was when I even obtained the form. When this happened, I said, so be it. You understand? It's not about me. If I am doing this thing, trying, in fact, even people were asked to write, I said I will not write. But one thing is that I will fight for the sustainability of this democracy. And that is why I go this way. It's not about me. You understand? It's about this country. It's about Nigeria. It's about democracy. So if I am doing it to champion my own cause, to either go to court, it's not. And that is why I brought this motion in the House. We will investigate. We have the powers to investigate the anomalies. And I will tell you, I was with a colleague who is from Kano. He told me he was waiting with the people who are going to vote in that election. When somebody tells him that this is the result, it has been written already. In Kano, he is from Kano. And I was with a colleague who came and met me. He met me because what I'm saying here, I want even on the day of judgment, God should tell me to stand up and say it. Who told me, did you know I have to sell my car? I was sitting the day I wanted to take that motion. He said, I said, did you get a ticket? He said, yes, I had to sell 3 of my cars to bribe my way.
Now somebody said I should ask you. Sorry, honorable, let me ask you this question. Not just me. Somebody who is watching is asking you. Chris Elua is saying, please ask the man that spoke first. That's the honorable. Who is to blame? Are you to blame INEC that there was no election in your constituency? Are you to blame INEC or your party?
Why I'm blaming INEC is for what happened in Zamfara. How did they know that there was no election in Zamfara? And there was election in Niger State. And I'm continuing. I'm telling you, election of state assembly, particularly if it is mockery, did not take place on the 7th, because on the 7th was my election. And on the 7th, all elections were closed. So how did they have state assembly? And the INEC cannot come out to say, yes, there was no election in Rapi. And they came to say there was election, there was no election. Is it because distinguished Senator Marafa made so much noise?
So why did you not make noise at that time? Why are you coming now when they've submitted list of candidates? I told you
it's not about me.
Okay.
It's about strengthening the democracy. If you want to do something to strengthen democracy, to establish fact, to, like even in my motion, go to my second prayers. I call section 226 of the Constitution because the parties sold form at exorbitant rate. And in the last 19 years, I want to ask the INEC man, has the party ever submitted their 4 years annual account, which by law, by that section 226, you need to forward it to National Assembly? So that's why I'm telling you, it's not about me. I want to see that this democracy should not be truncated.
So you want an example?
Yes. I think I came to National Assembly to serve this nation, not to be there when it is not necessary for me to be there. I want to tell you, I have lost hope to be there, and that was why I said I will not contest. But the people still have hope about me, and that was why they insisted I should contest this election. But when it so happened, I said, so be it. Let me work to ensure that it is about the future generation of this country. It is about the future of democracy to be sustained in Nigeria, not about Abubakar Chika to be a member of National Assembly.
All right, Abubakar, we'll come back to you. INEC, yes, the question you asked is a very important one. If you say there was no election in Zamfara, and somebody who participated as an aspirant in Niger State is saying there was no election in Niger. So why did INEC decide to pick the statement that there was no election in Zamfara, but left other parts? We have pockets of complaints from all across the political parties.
I am amazed about his allegation, because INEC has standards. We operate based on law and structure. And I'm trying to wonder how we will receive report that there was election when there was no election. So I think that going forward is something that we also will want to look at internally. I'm not sure, and I stand to be corrected, the INEC that I work for, I'm not sure that our officers will come out to say that election took place when election did not take place. Because why would they do that?
So INEC is waiting for litigations to start before they submit?
No, it's not waiting for litigation. I'm talking of our processes now.
Okay.
Because I will take personal interest in this matter when I get back to the commission to find out what really happened in that instance. Because you see, we have resident electoral commissioners in the states, and they are the ones, the state advise us on what transpired in their respective jurisdictions. And we take that. If, for instance, the REC had told us that there was no election in a particular state, that's the position that we're going to take. But if we receive reports that there was election and a list was generated and that election was monitored, you know, then we are under obligation to accept that list. But if this gentleman is saying that no election took place and then election took place, quote and unquote, I think we need to investigate that.
Honorable, something has been running through.
You need to also ask him. Any mockery, even if it is election, whether it is mockery that took place on the 8th, is it valid?
Is it valid? It's not a lawyer. So I would like to ask you as an INEC person, is it valid? That question will go to the lawyer. Okay. That question will go to the lawyer. Honorable, you quoted your governor.
Yes.
And it will not be right for us to say, yes, this is what the governor says. We are not there when he told you that. But I would have loved to have facts. Because if you put a call through to the governor's aide, he may deny it.
Well, the fact is, I think AIT can do one thing. Do me this favor. The candidates that contested elections, their name is everywhere. Call some of them. But I mean, House of Reps. Call some of them and ask. And I can give you the names of my colleagues. Verify from them. It happened. I can even, if cares, I can even call the names of those he formed as those from Zone A that will identify the most popular candidate and give him the nomination for. I can call their names.
Yes, let me go to the lawyer. You know, I do not want to put myself here. I'm not a politician, I'm a journalist. But as a journalist, I want to find out the facts about the whole issue. The Electoral Act is clear that you need to go through a Congress, go through a primaries. If it's for indirect primaries, after the Congress, delegates will come together because the indirect primaries is the delegate election. If it's the direct primaries, you have a good, I know INEC said, before you can take part, you can take up direct primaries, you have a good database of number of party members. Did they keep to that? And if that didn't happen, going by the story that Honorable told us, that there was no election, but yet there's a list. INEC just released some lists, and Niger State has candidates for all the positions. So which is INEC supposed to take? The Electoral Act or the political parties?
You see, that's part of the challenges that INEC usually, has when it seems to be acting in a way and manner that seems to give signals to, the general public that perhaps it's working in very close affinity with an incumbent, the incumbent party. When the PDP was in power, several such accusations, were leveled against the PDP, and I don't think the APC is any different. But the APC, I must be honest, has not been able to manage, success, because, it is one thing to succeed, it's also one thing to manage success, success very successfully. What has happened to the APC in this round of election is a far departure from the APC of 2014 heading into 2015 general elections. I must confess that even in my own state, there were challenges. The APC had challenges of conducting their primary elections. Even the governorship election of the APC in Benue, I would tell you for free, Ijoma, that it was not conducted. Somehow they woke up one day after the date even set by INEC for the conduct of primaries and just announced that all the other candidates have been directed to withdraw, by a telephone call from Abuja, suggesting that they have arrived at a consensus candidate.
But it's part of their constitution. They can have a consensus candidate.
Their constitution cannot override the provisions of the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act requires that under Section 87, subsection 6.
I think let me even come here. The Constitution says consensus.
Yes.
But when there is consensus, if there is any dissenting voice, it's not consensus.
But we will have to find out if...
Beyond that, Ejoma,
no, that's what I'm telling you, that's consensus.
Under Section 87, subsection 6, which you will read, it says that even if it's one candidate that is standing for that election, the requirement that the delegates who are accredited for that particular Congress must come and ratify the choice. And so you must do that, even as a mock, something to mimic the conduct of the Congress or a convention. Mind you, the president was the only candidate standing for the election,
and there was a Congress
under the APC. There were congresses, direct primary congresses all over the country. And a convention was held in Abuja subsequent to that to ratify the choice of the president. In this case, it didn't happen. And that's why the APC is having challenges all over. Yes, he has asked a question that why did INEC single out Zamfara to recognize the fact that there were no primary elections in Zamfara, yet INEC failed to take notice of the fact that there were no primaries in some other states. I'm not in a position to answer that, but I think INEC had given a timetable, and by the timetable of INEC, which he rightly pointed out, all matters relating to primary elections were supposed to cease on the 7th of October. And after the 7th of October, Zamfara, for instance, there were clear evidence, clear stories in the media that Zamfara was unable to conduct elections. For some of the states, like my state in Benue, I think it was underreported. Niger may have also suffered the same fate of underreportage. You know, the media didn't focus on the states. Somehow, I don't know what really happened, that there was a lot of focus on the ongoings in Zamfara, either because the actors, like he said, were very vocal actors, or there were critical stakeholders of the party. You had a sitting senator and an incumbent governor, and so the tussle was between two big elephants. And so it was in the media. But in some other places, it wasn't. Look at the case of Lagos. The media focused on Lagos in the days preceding the conduct of primaries in Lagos was so intense because an incumbent governor was involved, and then the national leader of the party was also involved. So a lot of the attention and focus was beamed on Lagos. The national chairman of the APC, on the date set for the conduct of the senatorial primaries in Lagos, a day before that, the national leader of the APC ordered the conduct of primaries ahead of the time scheduled by the National Secretariat of the party for the conduct of senatorial primaries. He was overruled by the national chairman or the National Executive Council or the National Working Committee of the party. And then primaries were ordered to take place on the day set by the party for the conduct of the primaries. I think the case in Zamfara, the case in Niger may just have suffered on the reportage, and that's why it's not in the media. Yeah. But I want to make a submission, Honorable. You have said that it's not about you, it's about this democracy. Now, the only way you can fight for the sustenance of this democracy, moving a motion in the National Assembly, perfectly correct. But if you want to deepen this democracy, then you must exercise your right to go to court, to have a legal pronouncement on this issue, because the jurisprudence of this matter is well settled by the courts, right from the beginning, from the High Court up to the Supreme Court. If you recall the case of Amechi versus Omehia, part of the reasons why the Supreme Court threw out Omehia as the governor of Rivers State was because he did not participate in the primary elections, that were conducted for the 2007 general election. And having not participated in the conduct of the primaries, it was wrong for the PDP to have feeded him as a candidate. And that's why the Supreme Court returned Amechi, who did not even participate in the general election, as the governor of Rivers State. Although the Supreme Court warned that that particular case should not be used as a precedent. So if you want to deepen this democracy, it's important that you take up your rights under the Constitution and under the Electoral Act to have the court pronounce on this matter. Otherwise, you can make the noise. Whatever you're doing in the National Assembly, what the National Assembly can only do is to cause an investigation to happen. Which they have done. Which they have already done. And at the end of the day, they will forward the report for implementation to the executive. The executive is not in any way bound by any law to implement the decision. So if you don't go to court, you would have lost that opportunity. Nigeria would have lost that opportunity. Your own constitution would have lost that opportunity. So I think if you really want to help this democracy, detach your personal views or your personal, this thing from it. Do that which will be entrenched under our law, so that the court can pronounce on this, so that the party will know that it is wrong not to conduct primaries. Because what the APC has done in several things that we thought were settled. I will just digress a bit, Ijoma. You will recall that even as Attorney General, when I wanted to contest the election in 2015, I had to resign 6 months before the date set for the conduct of the election. And I did that because if you look at the relevant provisions of the Constitution, it says you must resign 30 days before the conduct of elections. It is the APC has modified the definition of the requirement for resignation, before 30 days before the conduct of elections, to say that political party primary elections are not part of general election. And the Constitution didn't say general election, it said elections. It said elections. A primary election is an election. I want a concrete, I want the court Fayemi had the same case. He didn't resign. And then he contested the election. And virtually every other person in the APC who is contesting the election today, they're sitting pretty in their offices without resigning. Under the 16 years that the PDP ruled this country, the interpretation of that particular provision of the Constitution was that if you wanted to contest an election, even if it's a political party election, you must resign if you're a political appointee or you were a civil servant. Today you have civil servants sitting pretty in their offices, and then sending out, printing out posters, buying nomination forms, participating in the processes without losing their commission in the civil service.
Right,
so, I mean, there's a whole lot of issues that the APC is redefining now, which we need to have the courts to settle the jurisprudence or revisit it in such a way that at least we can understand that maybe there's a departure from what we knew yesterday. Otherwise, if you allow this matter just because of your personal, you don't want to go to court, I'm afraid you would not have helped this democracy. Okay.
Gentlemen, we'll need to take a break here, but let's quickly give you this. You may not be unaware that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has published the name of Senator Hope Uzodimma as the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress APC in Imo State. And just remember that on Thursday, there was a court judgment stopping INEC from publishing any name. Now, the electoral body made this publication on Friday following a court order, another court order obtained by the APC candidate from the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, in Abuja. Senator Hope Uzodimma had approached that court for an order to override Thursday's ruling of the Federal High Court sitting in Owerri. 20 aspirants on the platform of the APC had obtained the previous order, which restrained INEC from publishing the name of the party's candidate. And reacting to these developments, the APC leadership in the state has distanced itself from the name published by the electoral umpire. Reports say the publicity secretary of the party in Imo, Jones Owasawa, explained in a statement that INEC closes work at 4 p.m. except on election days, when it may continue collation of results till very late in the night. It said the electoral body had published the particulars of governorship candidate in the state earlier in the day, stressing that there was no fresh court order compelling INEC to publish any name for Imo State. That's on Imo. INEC had published, because I received a statement that INEC published Imo State with no, INEC published list of candidates with no Imo State. But before I could say, I'm going to bed, I got another one which says, Hope Uzodimma is not the candidate for Imo State. How did that happen? That is magic.
Well, I think the Legal Services Department will have to explain what happened. I don't have the details, but I'm sure that something legal must have persuaded that to take place. There are so many issues happening. We're under a lot of pressure, and I have not been briefed on that particular issue. So I think it will not be wise for me to make
Okay, it won't be wise for you to make a comment, but I want to point out there's an underlying statement from the spokesperson of the party in Imo State, where he said INEC is supposed to close submission of lists by 4 p.m.
Now, let me say this. If, like on election day, we have a window of between 8 o'clock and 2 p.m. Now, everybody on the queue as at 2 will be taken and allowed to vote. That means the time can extend beyond 2. If you're on the queue as at 2 p.m., you're allowed to go in. Now, if we say that the closing time is 4 p.m. and maybe X number of parties show up as at 4 p.m., they are there at 4 p.m., we are obliged to take their list. It's different if they come at 6 p.m. Because as at 4 p.m., when we are closing, we take note of all those who are present, and again, the political parties, waited on the last day. Most of them turn up on the last day, and so there's a lot of pressure. And that also put pressure on INEC staff, because when they came on the last day, it then means that we had to now extend the working hours to make sure that we take care of those that were able to meet the deadline. So that was what happened.
Mr. Oyekomi, I am bothered, and because even other Nigerians, I think, will also feel the same. It's not about me here. It's about those who are directly involved. If there was a published list earlier on, and which omitted the name Imo candidacy totally, just like what happened in
I'm not sure there
So
was
how come there was another published
no,
list?
I'm not sure there was a published list. I'm not sure that was what happened. INEC doesn't make such mistakes. The narratives can come from anywhere. You can have narrative from social media and all of that. We have a very competent legal services department, and every action taken is well taken. You know, because I don't have the details, I cannot say specifically what happened. But it is not true that INEC will publish a list and then withdraw it and then issue another one. No, that couldn't have happened.
Well, we'll be going for a break. We'll go for a break now to take reports from across the state. But there's something I need to ask before we go. The Rivers Buhaha is still there. And I thank God that you're a lawyer. We need to also just take a look at what is happening in Rivers State to APC. The Supreme Court judgment and the name of candidates, whoever it is. Let's just take a break and bring you reports from across the state. Stay with us.
From the southeast, in Imo State, despite INEC's publication of Hope Uzodimma as governorship candidate of the APC, supporters of Uche Nwosu are still optimistic that their candidate will fly the party's flag in the coming elections.
Here, unequivocally, just to express that, and as members of this campaign organization, our principal cannot chicken out. And he cannot abandon the ticket and the confidence imposed on him by Imo APC members. And if anybody is thinking that Ugumba Uche Nwosu will abandon this ticket, is making a mistake. No matter what it might take us, and provided we are going to do everything humanly possible, in every legal means possible, within our reach, that this mandate and this recognition and respect given to Ugumba Uche Nwosu by Imo APC members must not be allowed to be a nullity.
The PDP in a statement has cautioned the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, over his comments referring to the PDP's vice presidential candidate as a tribal bigot. The PDP advised Governor El-Rufai to face the challenges in his state. The names of candidates of the All Progressives Congress in Zamfara State for governorship and state assembly are absent in a list released by INEC. INEC National Commissioner in charge of the state, Amina Zakari, said the commission did not receive any list from the APC national headquarters. The PDP in Benue State said they have uncovered a plan by the opposition APC to buy permanent voters' cards of eligible voters ahead of the elections.
You will recall that we had revealed in our statement that APC PVC buying scam had been uncovered on the day the party staged a decamping ceremony inside the IDP's camp at Daud a few weeks back, while fraudulently making the IDPs who came out in their numbers to believe they were at the camp on a humanitarian visit.
Yes, those are reports from across the state, and let's just take this discussion further. We're still talking about party primaries. Before we went on that break, I said I was going to ask about Rivers State. The issue of Rivers State now, there's an existing Supreme Court judgment on the party congress, and there is a list purportedly said that a particular candidate's name is on that list. The thing is still on.
Well, my understanding of the judgment of the Supreme Court has to do with state delegates, not the national. That's my own understanding.
No, that's the truth.
It's that.
So I don't think. Yeah. So I think we should not align wrong premises here, so that he doesn't create problems.
Anyway, the case is in court.
I think I have a different view.
Okay.
The Supreme Court, two factions of the party emerged in Rivers. One faction that is loyal to Senator Magnus Abe, and one faction that is loyal to the Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amici. The faction that is loyal to Rotimi Amici purported to have conducted a Congress and elected, Tony Cole as the governorship aspirant, while the faction loyal to Abe, also purported to have conducted the Congress and elected Abe as the governorship aspirant.
Through direct primaries.
Through direct primaries. So somebody went to court to challenge the delegates list and the return of the chairman of the Minister of Transport's faction. Now, a restraining order from the High Court was issued, stopping the faction led by the Minister of Transport from parading itself as the authentic faction of the APC.
So not the Supreme Court.
Excuse me. That order, that order was appealed. And then the Court of Appeal vacated the order. It was appealed at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court now overruled the Court of Appeal and reaffirmed the earlier order issued by the High Court, which means that you're returning back to status quo ante. And if you're returning back to status quo ante, then it means that the faction lawyer to the Minister of Transport